So today we're going to go over study tips. First and foremost, I will just kind of give you guys an overview of what I do. So my name is Brittany. I am the College Transition and Retention Coordinator for Missouri College Advising Corps. A few facets of my job: I send text message reminders, which you guys are probably familiar with by now. I have the option to do one-on-one virtual meetings if you ever need any help with anything. I also can provide general support and encouragement. I can answer your questions, connect you to resources on your campuses. I will do some campus visits, which I will be talking about at the end of this presentation. I've recently started my peer mentor program back up at select campuses. And then finally, I will have monthly virtual office hours on Zoom. So if you're unfamiliar with what office hours are, it's essentially when your professor has like an open door policy and you can come in during that time and ask them any of your questions. I will be doing these monthly on September 20th, October 18th, and November 15th, otherwise the third Wednesday of the month. You'll be able to drop in between 10 to 12, 1 to 3, and 4 to 6. Those office hours are just for you if you need help with anything, you have any questions, you need to just get on and get some help with something. So those are just for you to get some help. A little bit more about me. So again, my name is Brittany. I'm the College Transition and Retention Coordinator for Missouri College Advising Corps. I am a Mizzou alum, so I went to University of Missouri-Columbia for undergrad and graduate school. I was a former first-generation college student, so I was the first one in my family to go to college. During my undergrad, so when I was freshman through senior year, I ended up with a interdisciplinary studies degree and a human development and family sciences minor. I went on to graduate school and got 2 master's degrees. I got a master's of social work and a master's of public health. Right after grad school, I started in this role in 2018. Just kind of a funny story. I am originally from St. Louis. I went to Columbia, Missouri, and now I live in Kansas City. So I have just progressively made my way across the state. And then a little fun fact about me, I'm a big, huge sports fan. I love all kinds of sports. I'm really excited for the Chiefs season to start back up. I've been all in on the Kansas City Current women's soccer team season. Ready for the Blues season to start. I just love all kinds of sports. I'm watching a lot of US Open lately. And I'm also a big musical theater fan. So I did musical theater in high school, and I even took a beginner music theater class in college. So it's a little bit about me. I hope to get to know you guys more as this year goes on. But right now we're going to jump right into some study tips. If you have any questions, you're welcome to type them in the chat. These workshops are never anything formal, so it's really just kind of hop on if you can. I'll always have them recorded. I will always send you guys the links out after, but sometimes it's helpful to just be on when it happens so you can get all the information and ask any questions you need. So very first, we are going to talk about the study cycle. I don't know if any of you guys have heard of the study cycle, but it's kind of a good way to think about studying in more than just a sit down and read your notes kind of way. First and foremost, preview. So this is probably kind of a weird way to think about studying because you don't really think about studying before you've even taken any notes. But before class, skim any new material and note any big ideas. So when your professor assigns you with any reading, you want to go through and obviously do the reading, but also just take notes of anything that you think might be a big idea from that reading. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, 5 to 15 minutes, just something easy that you can kind of get done. Then after that, you'll want to attend class, obviously. So you'll want to go to class, take notes, ask questions. We'll talk a little bit about note-taking. I also have a link to another video I can send you guys about some note-taking tips, but make sure you're actually taking notes. It's really easy if you bring your computer to get distracted. I know I always got distracted, but sometimes your computer is just the easiest way to take notes. If it's a professor that talks really fast or is hard to understand, maybe you need your computer to take notes. I would recommend typically writing them down is going to be a better way for comprehension and to remember your notes. But if you absolutely have to use your computer, no big deal. The next step is review, and that's a very important step. You want to make sure you're reading over your notes that you take in class and filling in any gaps with things from the reading, but also develop questions. So I always recommend, if students are able to, read their notes the same day they took them, because that's going to really allow you to comprehend and have that material soak in. But on top of that, if you have any questions, you want to make sure you're getting them written down before the next class. So you can ask the professor, hey, I was going over the notes from last time. These are some questions or things I was still unsure about. And go ahead and just write those questions in the margin or write them down in that notebook. That way you can find out the best way to really grasp the information. So make sure you're doing the review step. It's really important. Maybe you're not able to review your notes like right after class that day, but it's really helpful if you can review them that same day of class. Obviously, the next part of the study cycle is study. Very important. One thing you guys really need to focus on is 30 to 50 minutes. So you don't necessarily have to sit down to study every day for hours on end. It can just be short little burst sessions every week. However, you do need to have these for each class. So you're taking 5 classes. You should be studying each week for about 30 to 45 minutes per class. So 5 times 30 is 150 minutes. Which does seem like a lot, but you can build that into your schedule. It's really important if you create a study schedule. We're going to talk more about this on the next slide, but studying also isn't just sitting down and reading notes or reading a textbook. You want to make sure you're doing active studying. The last part of the study cycle is check. So can I teach this material to someone? Are my study methods effective? You always want to make sure you're doing this. It doesn't necessarily have to be a actual thing where you sit down and say can I teach this material to someone? Are my study methods effective? But you do want to be kind of keeping in mind of oh, last time I went to the library, it was too quiet in there. I didn't really I wasn't really able to focus. That's not a very good spot for me to go. Or last time I studied early in the morning and it was hard for me to focus. Maybe I need to study at night. So check and make sure that your study methods are actually working for you and your study environment is working for you. Like I said, a lot of times just reading through your notes isn't going to be enough to really grasp the material. There's a lot of other things you can do to kind of get through that active studying. So some active studying ways. 1, create a study guide. You guys are probably all familiar with study guides. Study guides can be kind of tough because you don't want it to just end up a rewriting of all your notes. So in your study guide, you really want to make sure you're capturing big ideas and kind of writing out things that will help you comprehend. So a study guide might not be just a bunch of notes. Your study guide might be different concepts from this page. So you might have a study guide that includes a quiz, but it also includes some diagrams. It also includes some mind maps. It's kind of like a amalgamation of everything. Create your own quiz so you kind of know what you don't know when it comes to studying. So you can create your own quiz of maybe it's math problems that are really hard for you, or equations that you're not quite getting, or concepts you're not understanding yet, kind of to quiz yourself. Recall can be really helpful for studying. You don't want to make it your whole studying thing, but every now and then it can be very helpful. If you're able to connect real life examples to concepts and theories, that can be a really great way to study. So thinking about classes, maybe psychology or science classes, things that are easy to connect real life examples to is going to help you understand the material that much better. So if you can connect any kind of real life things to different theories, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to remember that concept and to really comprehend what's going on. So make any diagrams, mind maps. If you're a doodle person, you like to draw, doodles can actually be really helpful to kind of understand the material. Whatever kind of helps you not just understand the big ideas, but the overlapping ideas. So figuring out things that kind of all come together for the big picture, aren't just little things here and there. If you don't know what a mind map is, a mind map's really just when you write a word in the center and then kind of have a bunch of things coming off it. That can also be really helpful. And then doodles obviously is just drawing. But I'm thinking doodles could also be very helpful in those biology classes or classes maybe when you're trying to memorize certain spots of the brain or certain body parts, or maybe there's a certain diagram you're trying to understand. Drawing can actually help you understand that. Saying the information out loud and kind of as if you were teaching it to someone can be very helpful because you're going to be able to talk through the concept, but also you're going to hopefully explain it in a way that maybe a child or someone that doesn't know could understand. So I know that sounds silly, but sometimes if we're just sitting alone, we might not want to talk out loud. We might think it's weird, but it actually is really helpful for us. Our brain kind of processes the information and can remember it better. Obviously, you can seek out practice questions or any problems you might need to complete. So again, thinking of math or statistics or calculus classes, things like that, you might need some practice problems. So if you can find any of those in a textbook or from your professor, or maybe your learning center, things like that, that can be really helpful. And lastly, using flashcards. So again, recall can be really helpful. Kind of quizzing yourself. one thing I saw when I was kind of doing research for this, I saw a method for flashcards where you make a bunch of flashcards and you just kind of start going through them, but you have 5 different piles. And so that first pile is things that you understood right away. That second pile, you might move it into, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. That first pile is going to be concepts you didn't get right away. The second pile is things you get away, and you want to move them each down the list. So eventually you want all your cards to be in pile 5. But as you're kind of doing it, you just go through that once and you'd see where all the cards are, and that's going to tell you what cards you need to focus on more. So for example, that first stack, if you're putting a lot of cards in the first stack, those are ones you probably need to review every day. Cards maybe you're putting in the second stack, you only need to review every other day. Cards you're putting in the third stack, maybe once a week. Cards you're putting in the fourth stack, maybe once every other week. And finally, cards in that fifth stack, those are cards you're always understanding. Those are maybe material you don't need to really study, or you can only study like once a month. So that can be a really good way to like get to have flashcards work for you. I know we always think of just traditionally like looking at flashcards, it can be kind of boring. But if you can make a better method to really use those flashcards, it can be very helpful. So some tips to keep in mind. Take notes the right way. So there is a link here. I will copy it and put it in the chat. This was a video I did last year called Note-Taking Tips and Textbook Reading. So if you're someone who maybe you aren't sure how to read textbooks for college or how to take good notes, I did a whole video last year about that. But you really want to make sure you're taking notes the right way and you're not missing out on information. Know what your best study environment is. So again, kind of learn, are you someone that likes to study in your dorm, or is that a place of distraction for you? Do you like to go to the library? Do you like music? No music? Do you like to study in the morning? Do you like to study late at night? Do you really like to study with a group of people, or is that too distracting for you? So learn what your best study environment is and then use those tips that work best for you to create that best environment. Keep a study schedule. So earlier we talked about the study cycle. Preview, attend, review, study, check. But for that cycle to really work, you have to have the schedule in place. So you need to know what days you're studying math versus what days you're studying history. You need to know when you're reviewing your notes for that day. When are you going to like check yourself, that kind of thing. So make sure you have a good study schedule. It's easy to just know what your class schedule is and follow that. But to be really organized, not only should you have a study schedule, but you should have everything planned out. So like, when are you going to the gym? What time do you eat lunch? Getting into that good routine will really help your body expect it every day, and it'll be easier to study when the time comes. Prioritize comprehension over memorization. So it's really easy to just like want to memorize certain things like word for word, but that's going to make it a lot harder for you to recall. You really want to be comprehending the material, understanding the why and like the bigger pictures. Eliminate any distractions. So that's obvious. Maybe you set like a lock on your phone for 15 minutes at a time, then you get a break afterwards. Or maybe you turn Wi-Fi off because you're just setting offline, turning the TV off, or maybe putting on like some classical music that won't help you like get distracted by music. But really eliminating those distractions so that way you can focus solely on what you're doing. Multitasking and trying to do too many things at once really isn't good material sink in. Plan ahead to avoid cramming. So again, this is why a study schedule comes in handy. You don't want to wait until the night before a test to be studying all the material and cramming it in. If you're scheduling a little bit at a time here and there, you're going to already be ready when the first test comes. You're not going to need to study like the day before or the day of, pardon me. You'll already be ready. So if you plan ahead and have that good study schedule, you can avoid having to cram later. Obviously, knowing what to study can be very helpful. You don't ever want to focus too much on the textbook or too much just on material. There are some professors who will put things on their test that were just the textbook. Maybe you never even talked about them in the lecture. That's why it's important to understand the syllabus and know what to expect from your professors. If you need to go to their office hours to get help, that's fine, but really know what you should be studying. And obviously, lastly, you can reach out for help. Maybe a study group is good. If you're someone that's really not understanding the material, I'm thinking like for a class like science or something, a study group can be very, very helpful. However, there's also tutoring. Almost every campus offers free tutoring, especially for classes like college algebra or chemistry, or they have writing centers for English where you can go and get help from a writing tutor. And lastly, your professor's office hours. So all of your professors will have some kind of office hours where they have like an open door policy. You can go in there and ask them any of your questions. That's a great time to ask them like, hey, I know our first test is coming up. what should I really be focusing on, or hey, I'm not really understanding this concept, is there a different way you can explain it, or what's an easier way for me to remember this equation, things like that. So definitely reach out for help if you're not understanding it. It's no big deal if you have to reach out for extra help. I am not good at math and had to seek out a tutor, and that actually helped me a lot in getting to pass the class. So we are nearing the end, and I would love to hear any of your guys' questions that may have come up. You can type them in the chat or unmute, whatever is easiest for you.